Hey, what's going on, guys? How is everybody doing? So the other day, I was having a conversation with one of you guys in the comment section of one of my videos. It was the Elemental Mastery video, where they were asking a lot about the swirl reaction, about orders and how it specifically worked, because there is a function of the swirl mechanic that makes it a little bit more complicated than other reactions. So I thought I would make a dedicated video to the swirl reaction and talking about elemental absorption, because that's what makes us a little bit more complicated than the other reactions. So we're going to be doing a deep dive. We're going to be talking about elemental mastery as well, a little bit additional information there, and hopefully this answers some of your questions about that. Most importantly, Venti's Q, because Venti's Q is busted. But overall, we're looking at elemental absorption and swirl here. So first of all, let's get some basics out of the way in what swirl is fundamentally. So swirl is an elemental reaction caused by using Anemo attacks. Now, basically what it does, it's going to cause one element, so either your pyro, hydro, cryo, or electro, and it's going to cause it to spread to other enemies. So in order for a swirl reaction to occur, Anemo has to be used second. It's not one of these that can be done either way. So if you were to use someone like Venti, use his E, deal some Anemo damage, then come in with, say, Elisa, use a basic attack, you're not going to get a swirl there. But if you do it the other way around, you will trigger a swirl reaction. Another basic point is that swirl is not continuous. It's only going to be applied once. So for example, if you were to use pyro on an enemy, then use an Anemo attack, that pyro will be spread to all the nearby enemies in a swirl. Now, if you then use a hydro attack, you'll only get a vaporized reaction on the enemies that you hit with hydro. It does not also spread with that swirl. All right, so as we come over here to Genshin Impact, we're going to take a look at here how this actually works. So let's go ahead and inflict one of these guys with pyro. We go ahead and hit him with Venti's E. Boom, we spread. It was really quick there, but we can see that the pyro has now spread to two of these hemitrails. So that's basically how swirl works. So now the reason we're taking a look at this and the reason why it can be a little bit complicated is because of the way Venti's burst works. So if we go ahead, flick this guy with pyro, switch over to Venti, use his Q, we're going to see here that we get a bunch of different swirl triggers, but we're not actually applying pyro another time. And as I said before, swirl doesn't apply continuously. So why is this the case? Now, the reason this works the way it does is because Venti's burst has a built-in mechanic called elemental absorption that changes the way that his swirl works a little bit. Now, it might sound complicated at first, but overall, at its core, it's really quite simple. So basically how this reads is if it comes into contact with hydro, pyro, cryo, or electro elements, it will deal additional elemental damage of that type. Elemental absorption can only occur once per use. So what exactly are we doing here? Well, so if an enemy is afflicted with an element, and then you use Venti's burst or any ability that has elemental absorption, it will absorb that element, which essentially means that it's turning the burst or the tornado or whatever it may be into that type. So in that case that we just saw, Venti's burst was essentially becoming a pyro Anemo burst. It was using two elements of the same type in every attack, triggering a swirl. And that is why elemental mastery on Venti is so good, because if you can get those swirls going, every one of those hits is going to scale off his elemental mastery, which is why he's very good at dealing combos. All right, so next up, we're going to be looking at a little bit more complicated of a scenario with three elements. So first up, we're going to apply Electro with Lisa, then use Venti's burst, and finally, we're going to end with a cryo attack. So we can see there were a couple different reactions. We had a swirl reaction and we had a superconduct reaction. So why does this get a little bit more complicated? Well, it gets a little bit more complicated because there are different ways that things are being applied, because you have the electro damage, which originally started from Lisa, you have the Anemo damage, which is coming from Venti, and now you have the cryo damage, which is coming from Kaya. So who is initiating these reactions, who is finishing these reactions, and how do these actually work? Well, so it works pretty much exactly how you would think of it does if you're thinking of it in a linear fashion. So you first apply the electro damage, then we get the swirl reaction from Venti's burst. That's how we get the swirl reaction. So in those cases, Venti's elemental mastery matters. However, when we get to the superconduct reaction, that was triggered off the electro from Lisa, but we were getting there from the cryo from Kaya. So in that case, for the superconduct reactions, Kaya is the one whose elemental mastery actually matters. So in this scenario, there are actually two characters whose elemental mastery you need to worry about, which is Venti and Kaya. As another example, let's take a look at a couple other heroes and see how this would actually work. So I'm not actually going to do this because this scenario would actually be hard to recreate. So let's say you have a Mona in your main character. So your Mona goes ahead, hits a Himichurl with a basic, applying the wet status. Your main character then comes in, holds their skill, which is their E, or, you know, their skill for you mobile or console players. A burning Himichurl then walks into the attack. So now you have Hydro, you have Anemo, and you have Pyro. You're going to create a vaporized reaction, which is caused by the main character, not Mona, because the effect is being applied by the swirl damage. Now, same thing. You have Mona hit the same enemy, but before you switch to your main character, you switch to Zhongling throughout your Guba, your skill. You then quickly switch to your main character, grab the enemy, same way with the skill, but now the reaction is being caused by Zhongling, not the main character, because that final interaction was created from Zhongling, rather than the final reaction being caused by the Hydra, which is now built in to the swirl of the main character's skill, and that is because of elemental absorption. So the main point here is that if you're trying to figure out who you need to put elemental mastery on, figure it out logically. Follow it in your head. How are the reactions actually playing out in a linear fashion? And that should give you a good clue as to who to put elemental mastery on. I know that there are a lot more complicated scenarios than that, but that is the basic premise of it. So guys, I hope this made it a little bit easier to understand why Venti's Q can be very complicated, but in the end, if you follow things linearly, it might not actually be that complicated. Now, Venti's Q is not the only skill in this game that has elemental absorption currently. The main character's skill and burst both have elemental absorption. Venti's Q does, of course, and Sucrose's Q. Her E does not, and none of Jean's skills have elemental absorption. So if you're looking at those are the ones you have to worry about in terms of the order that you use. Just remember, whichever character triggers the reaction last, that's the character whose elemental mastery you need to be worrying about. So guys, hopefully that was all helpful, informative. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did and you want to see some more content from me, head over to my Twitch page, twitch.tv/xjazz207. Or if you want to support us right here on YouTube, you can go ahead and click that red subscribe button. I do appreciate it, guys, and I've really been loving the support you guys have been giving me. I've been seeing a lot of really great comments down below all the videos. I've been really appreciating all the support and the questions. You guys have been really constructive with your questions, and it's not like you're just throwing out questions that we can easily answer. They're actually in-depth questions, so I do really appreciate that. I love the in-depth discussion. But guys, unfortunately, that is the end of today's video. Hopefully you did enjoy. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.